All right, let's dive into a story that honestly sounds like something straight out of a movie. We're talking about a massive, long-running lottery ticket theft, all from a single convenience store in Miami. It's a wild scheme that kicks off with just one suspicious transaction and ends with a dramatic confession. So let's get into it. Okay, let's just start with this number, over $300,000. That is the face value of the scratch-off tickets that just disappeared from one store. And it's like it just vanished into thin air. So yeah, that brings us to the big question, right? How in the world does one convenience store manager supposedly pull off a heist this big? We're talking right under everyone's noses. We're going to break down exactly how this whole thing happened. So our story really kicks off with one of those small details. Something that just felt off. The scene is the Bargain Stop 2, just a local convenience store in Miami. Everything looks totally normal, business as usual. But behind the counter, the numbers just weren't adding up. The owner's going over the books, and he spots something really troubling. We're talking thousands of dollars being pulled from the store's bank account, all for lottery transactions. Now, this wasn't just, cash missing from the till. This was way more complex, tied directly into the lottery system itself. Okay, so with these red flags popping up, the owner decides to do a little digging himself. And that decision, it leads him straight to a face-to-face, pretty unavoidable confrontation with the one person he trusted to run the whole place. So the owner connects the dots and realizes entire books of scratch-off tickets are just gone. He goes straight to his manager, a 34-year-old guy named Rakesh Tenguturi. And what happens when he confronts him? Total denial. Tenguturi claims he has no clue what's going on. So case closed, right? Well, not so fast. And this is where the story takes a wild turn. Right after that denial, the owner is just sitting there probably with more questions than answers, and his phone goes off. It's a text from his manager. And in that text, a full-blown confession to the whole thing. He even repeated it in person later. Just like that, the whole denial just fell apart. All right, so now we know who did it. The big question is how. How did the scheme actually work? Well, that confession gave investigators basically a roadmap to piece together the entire operation. So let's go back to that huge number from the beginning. With the confession in hand, investigators could finally confirm it. The total face value of all the stolen tickets was, in fact, over $300,000. And get this, it wasn't some one-time smash and grab. This was a systematic thing happening over a long, long time. But wait, how were the winnings even collected? Well, a Florida lottery investigator dug in and found something pretty interesting. The winning tickets were being cashed in big batches, all at the same exact retail spot. And according to the investigator, that kind of pattern is super unusual. A massive red flag. It's basically a textbook indicator of fraud. Okay, now this is where the money side of things gets a little tricky. Because, even though over $300,000 in tickets were stolen, that actually wasn't the final amount the store lost. It's weird, I know. Let's break down why. So, here's the key to the whole scheme. The manager was supposedly taking the winnings from some of the stolen tickets and using that cash to pay the store for other stolen tickets. It's almost like a Ponzi scheme, but with scratch-offs. He was trying to cover his tracks, you see, by feeding some of the money back into the system. This made the total loss look way smaller than it really was. So after you untangle all that financial juggling, accounting for the winnings that were put back in, investigators finally landed on this number. The actual direct theft from the store was $60,546.95. I mean, that's still a ton of money, but it's such a fascinating contrast to that huge $300,000 number we started with, isn't it? So with a confession and a clear money trail, the story moves into its final phase, the official consequences for the guy at the center of this whole mess. Rakesh Tenguturi was officially charged with two pretty serious felonies, organized fraud of $50,000 or more and grand theft. And those charges, they don't just reflect the amount of money, they reflect how systematic and planned out this whole thing was. And finally, on February 24th, 2026, the manager was arrested and booked into jail. That pretty much wrapped up the investigation and kicked off the legal side of things. And that kind of leaves us with one last question to chew on. The lottery itself, it's a game of pure random chance. But was this scheme, was this some kind of calculated risk by a guy who thought he'd found a system, a loophole? Or was it just a desperate gamble that really was always going to end badly? It's something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this one.